I now give the floor to Ms. Bintou Keita.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, Madam Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Thérèse Kaikwamba-Wagner, the Permanent Representative of the Republic of Rwanda, Ernest Ramucho, the Permanent Representative of the Republic of Angola, dear colleagues, Huang Sha, Special Envoy of the Secretary General for the Great Lakes region, and all other ambassadors that are joining us for this session. Thank you for having convened another emergency meeting of the Council relating to the recent developments in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the need to find a way out of a crisis which represents a clear threat to the peace and stability of the Great Lakes region. This session is taking place in a context marked inter alia by the appointment of a new president of the African Union at the summit on the 15th of February. I would like to congratulate His Excellency, the President of Angola, João Lourenço, mediator of the African Union in the framework of the Luanda process. I hope that his mandate will be marked by the silencing of the guns on the continent once and for all. Despite many international calls for a ceasefire and a cessation of offensives, the M23, supported by the Rwandan army, has continued to make progress in the provinces of North Kivu and South Kivu. This advance has had devastating consequences, leading to the loss of many human lives during the taking of Goma. In 2 weeks, the Congo River Alliance, of which the M23 is one of the main components, has established a parallel administration in Goma with the designation of a governor and a mayor. In South Kivu, the M23 has taken control of Kavumu Airport and Bukavu, the provincial capital, on the 16th of February. The M23 has since then continued its advance and yesterday seized the town of Kamanyola, which is at the intersection of the three borders between the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi. Since the taking of Goma, the M23 has been imposing severe restrictions on MONUSCO's freedom of movement, preventing efforts aimed at evaluating damage done to Goma Airport and efforts to support the safe elimination of unexploded ordnance in the city. The M23 has also prevented MONUSCO from resupplying with water and other vital goods the troops of the Southern African Development Community Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, SAMI DRC. What's more, the M23 is in control of all roads entering and leaving the area under its control. That poses serious challenges to the civilian and uniformed personnel of MONUSCO for rotations which are essential for the implementation of its mandate, the priority of which is the protection of the civilian population. What's more, MONUSCO's essential infrastructure in Goma and in other parts of North Kivu is under extreme pressure. These facilities are sheltering persons that sought refuge there in order to enjoy the mission's protection in accordance with international humanitarian law. However, these facilities were never designed nor equipped to house a large number of people in the long term. The situation is particularly critical because health and hygiene conditions are rapidly deteriorating, presenting a risk both to the protected persons and the personnel of MONUSCO. This is feeding disinformation and is being used to amplify anti-MONUSCO sentiments. Mr. President, the human rights situation in North and South Kivu has considerably worsened. In addition to cases of deaths due to fighting between the M23 and the security forces of the DRC, MONUSCO has also documented cases of forced recruitment. We are still observing ongoing movements of displaced persons around Goma. The majority of the former sites have been dismantled and pillaged by host communities and displaced persons, and those persons are going either to their places of origin or to new collective centres around Goma. Even though there are still uncertainties over the exact circumstances of these secondary displacements, the conditions for a safe, voluntary, informed and dignified return in line with international principles may not be guaranteed. What's more, we have recorded many searches of hospitals and homes by the M23 looking for soldiers and civilians perceived to be opposed to the group. The United Nations Joint Human Rights Office receives on a daily basis requests for individual protection from various social actors, including human rights defenders. The latter are often faced with threats, and there are risks of reprisals by M23 in areas under its control.
President, the M23's offensive in North Kivu and South Kivu has increased the vulnerability of girls and women to conflict-related sexual violence, mass displacement, the influx of combatants and prisoners, and the proliferation of weapons have considerably exacerbated the risk. At the same time, logistical and security constraints continue to hamper the United Nations' ability to verify reported cases. In South Kivu, fighting in the Haut Plateau caused a high number of injured. Medical supplies need to be transported to Ivira to be able to assist the wounded. The situation is calm in Bukavu, where humanitarian actors are resuming their activities. Humanitarian response continues in Ijwi, where over 100,000 displaced people arrived in January, as well as in Minova, where around 200,000 displaced people are staying with host families. Humanitarian actors must continue to have access and be able to do their work unhindered to keep assisting this vulnerable population. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, I welcome the conclusions of the joint summit of the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community on the situation in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo on the 8th of February in Tanzania. This summit reaffirmed the call for a cessation of hostilities and an immediate ceasefire. The summit also insisted on the resumption of direct negotiations and dialogue with all state and non-state parties, including M23, in the context of the Luanda and Nairobi processes. It also reaffirmed the call for the neutralization of the FDLR and the withdrawal of Rwandan troops from Congolese soil. It is essential that the provisions of the communiqué from the EAC SADC summit relating to the restoration of essential public services, the immediate reopening of Goma airport, and the primary supply routes, including over Lake Kivu, be implemented immediately in order to alleviate the suffering of the population. I encourage the heads of the military staff of EAC and SADC countries to meet on a constant basis to determine modalities for the implementation of the ceasefire, as well as urgent measures provided for in the communiqué. In addition to the reopening of the Goma airport requested by the summit, the reopening of Kavumu airport would also be essential. The United Nations, including MONUSCO, remains determined to support all efforts to bring the parties to the negotiating table in order to find lasting political solutions to this crisis, which risks engulfing the entire region. In this regard, it is important to recall the significant progress made in recent months in the context of the Luanda process. It is crucial, as underscored in the communiqué from the African Union Peace and Security Council meeting in Addis Ababa on the 14th of February, that what has been achieved not be lost.
It is imperative that this Council takes urgent and decisive steps to avert a wider regional war. I call on this Council to hold the perpetrators of human rights violations and abuses in the Democratic Republic of Congo accountable. In this regard, I welcome the adoption by the Human Rights Council on 7 February of a resolution establishing a fact-finding mission to be followed by an independent commission of inquiry to investigate and document violations of human rights and international humanitarian law in the Eastern DRC. Finally, I call on all parties to uphold their obligations to protect civilians in full compliance with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. This includes the inviolability of United Nations premises and installations in the Democratic Republic of Congo, including the safety and security of individuals under MONUSCO's protection. Thank you for your kind attention.
I thank Ms. Keita for the briefing.